it begins at that kitchen table, in all honesty. That kitchen table where we solve all the world's problems, that's where this starts at, right? Talking about the calls that we just run on and processing that information. That's where it starts.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Tailboard Misfits podcast. Today, I'm talking with Matt Ballard. He's a 23-year fire service veteran of the Balch Springs Fire Department, where he currently serves as an engineer and a paramedic. He started the Free Burn 2023 podcast, where they're burning the stigma with first responder mental health. Matt, man, how's it going?
Brother, I'm doing excellent. How you doing? Thank you for having me on.
Man, I'm doing good. I know you're fairly local to where I'm at. We're probably an hour 15 away from each other. And I don't know about you, but this is like the first day of sunshine in like 3 days. So
yeah, I've got a lake in my backyard. Literally, it's not right now. Yeah. So much rain.
It's been raining its butt off. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We met a couple weekends ago down at the Daggum Fire Conference, and I had heard about Free Burn. I had kind of seen you have a couple of the guys that I follow on there. And I started looking into it, and man, it's just like, I know we have Next Rung, who's doing great things. And of course they don't, not that I know of, have necessarily like a platform or podcast like you. And this is something that I think hits home to just about everybody in the fire service. Everyone is seeing bad things, or they're running bad things, or they have friends that have gone through this. And even on top of that, their family and friends. It's not so exclusive to the fire service. Yeah. So what you're doing with Free Burn, man, it's so much needed, and it's awesome what you guys are doing there. So I kind of wanted to just get into your story, and then we'll kind of get into Free Burn a little bit. So if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, starting off, man, it's like, thank you for having me on first off. And, I didn't choose this, man. It chose me, had my own journey, my own story, like a lot of us do. Right. Back in 2016 was my first time to really go through any kind of mental health or anxiety, depression type stuff. And it's funny, man, because during that time, it was shortly after the Rowlett tornadoes. I don't know if you remember that or not, but
I was there in a different capacity.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, we sent an engine company over there just to help out with medical calls. We ended up doing search, in a neighborhood that we were the first ones there. It started out as a medical call, ended up we're in a full blown search, right? So saw a lot of stuff over there, just not the normal stuff that we see, but really didn't know how that played a part in any of my mental health stuff until later on, and I'll get to that. But shortly after that, I had a kidney stone stuck, right? And this is how it kind of starts for me. So went to the doctor. Doctor's like, yep, you got a stone stuck, 8mm stone stuck in your urethra. You got like a 30% chance of passing it. So never had surgery or anything like that in my life, so other than having tubes in my ears when I was a kid, but I don't you want to consider that a surgery or not. But long story short, I ended up having to get the stone taken out. Had to get it removed because I couldn't pass it. So that kind of sent me into a tailspin and didn't really know why. When I woke up from that surgery, I just didn't feel right. My anxiety was peaked, which I'd never really had to deal with any type of anxiety like that, which quickly turned into depression. Went to my PCP, ends up putting me on medication, and medicine started working. I was off for 3 months. He took me off work, basically to let the medicines kick in, right? So med started working. I think I went to maybe 2 or 3 counseling sessions at that time, and it wasn't like a vetted counselor. So did those counseling sessions, got released, went back on duty, and I would have like ups and downs like we always do. You go through stuff in life. So anxiety would come back a little bit sometimes, but the medicine basically kept it capped off, right? A lot of the core issues that I know now that I was dealing with or wasn't dealing with at that time were still there, So fast forward to 2021. In between that time, let me back up. In between that time, excuse me, I was on B shift for 17 years. Same shift, right? Same captain, same battalion chief. I might have been the senior guy on that shift at that time too, or senior firefighter at least. Some stuff had happened, I was doing a lot of isolating, not blaming nothing on them guys. A lot of it was me, and just not knowing what I was going through at that time, still dealing with a lot of crap. So, and they saw it in me, you know, but they didn't know what it was either. So, went through some stuff there, ended up switching over to C shift, which was like, dude, it was like having a new job for me, really. You know, it was just a whole nother start, right? So I go to C shift. I'm there for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And it was 9/11. We were having a memorial. And I noticed that my anxiety was like starting to peak out again, getting really high. And I kind of saw it leading up to it from a call that we had a month before that, right? Went on like a regular medical call. I'm the only medic at the time. I think I was the only medic on our shift at that. And we first respond with at the time it was care flight. It's different now, but we always beat them on scene. So we get there first on this medical call. I think it came in as an unconscious person or something. Well, me and the guy that I was with, we get in there. The guy's laying on the floor. He had esophageal varices, and I don't want to get too graphic, but I'm just going to tell you what I saw, right? So esophageal varices, we all know what that leads to. You know, it starts getting in the gut. You start throwing up blood. And dude, it looked like a murder scene in there, just to be frank with you. Okay. Not something that you see every day, but it's not something that we don't see, right? So, but something that day, man, it triggered me, right? I stood over that dude, checked his pulse. Obviously, he was gone. Put the pads on him just to confirm everything. Care flight gets there. We turn the scene over to them. They confirm, you know, pronounce the gentleman deceased. And we go back to the station, me and my partner do. That evening, I could not sleep to save my life, right? My mind was just spinning 100 miles an hour. And I'd felt that before, you know, when I went through the anxiety and stuff previous, you know, 5 years before that. So I knew something wasn't right. Okay. I had taken, me and a couple of other guys at our station had taken a course on peer support and mental health in the fire service, police service. And I'd learned a little bit about it, about peer support and EMDR therapy and different types of trauma therapy for us as first responders. And that was always in the back of my mind, like a tool in the toolbox, right? That's the first thing that popped up whenever my anxiety started peaking out again. So I immediately called a local therapy agency. I know this lady. I go to church with her, and she's one of the counselors there. And I'm like, hey, do you have a therapist that does, one is a trauma certified therapist and does EMDR therapy? And she's like, yes, I do. And then I have one more that does it. She wouldn't do it because obviously I know her, right? So it's kind of like a conflict thing there. So I got set up with her and immediately started going back to counseling. 9/11 comes around, and it's just like one thing after another, man. Just anxiety starts climbing, and the medicine's not working like it's supposed to. But I'm starting to do stuff to try to get through that, right? So into September, doctor decides to do a med switch on me, and my PCP had the same PCP for 20 years. So trusted the guy, right? And I'm not saying nothing bad about him, but he didn't switch me off the meds right to a new med. I mean, these medicines that, you know, SSRIs is what I'm talking about, or antidepressants and stuff like that. So he basically tells me, go home, cut the medicine that you're taking now, cut it in half, start the new medicine tomorrow, right? So that's exactly what I did. Well, horrible idea, because it just, anxiety, depression peaked out to the max. I'm still on duty, you know, this whole time, trying to work through it. So he eventually pulls me back off duty. And then, you know, the first thing in my mind is, here we go again, right? And we had no peer program at our department. Really no resources at all when it came to mental health stuff. It's not like they didn't care about me. They just didn't have it, right? So pat me on the back, go get better. You know, your job's good. Go get better and come back to work. Okay. So it was basically left up to my wife and I to try to find the right resources to get help, right? And it matters, man. It really does, to find vetted clinicians, doctors that know how we operate as firefighters and first responders. It makes a difference to go to the right people, you know. So lo and behold, this doctor, my PCP, finally tells me, hey, there's really nothing else that I can do for you, right? I mean, they upped the dosage on the medicine, and anxiety is still high. I'm not sleeping like I'm supposed to. Having nightmares, I'm just like sweat. I mean, night sweats like crazy. And if I do sleep, so yeah, it was just a horrible time, right? To have to go through this crap for anybody. But finally, he tells me there's nothing else I can do for you, right? So that's another letdown. It's just like, holy crap, here's my doctor that I've been with for 20 years. And am I that bad that he don't know what to do, right? So he's like, man, you need to go find a psychologist or a psychiatrist and find out what's causing all this, basically, And I'm like, well, I don't know where to go, right? So my wife and I found one here in Waxahachie. She was a nurse practitioner / psychologist. So a lot of years of experience, and I'm thinking, okay, this, I'll go see her. And keep in mind, I was 19 years in at the time. So I was 2 months from having hit my 20-year mark. Okay. And being able to draw full retirement. So I go see this lady. It was during COVID time. So we do a face-to-face over the computer, televisit. And I tell this lady, pour my soul out to her for an hour and a half, right? And just tell her everything about me and the stuff that I've been through. She's like, okay. Well, she immediately starts weaning me off the meds that my PCP put me on, because it wasn't the right meds for me to be on. And she's like, well, we got to get you off of that stuff, because it was an SNRI. And she said, I don't think that's what you need. You need to stay on an SSRI. So she does it the right way. She weans me off, puts me back on a very low dose SSRI. And obviously it takes time for that medicine to build into your system, right? So I start that out. I go back to her, I think twice. I finally go into her office for a next visit is what it was. And she just starts asking me off the wall questions, like she's never met me, didn't know who I was, anything, and then me and my wife are just looking at each other like, what the heck is going on? I spoke to this lady 2 weeks ago for an hour and a half on the phone, and she acts like she's never met me before, So I go through the whole process of trying to explain everything that I'm going through, that I'm a first responder, and, my time in, the things that we've done, saw everything. And she's like, well, I hate to tell you this, but you just need to retire. This is never going to go away. This is never going to get better for you. You just keep subjecting yourself to this, and you're not going to get better unless you retire. Get away from it. Well, dude, it like lit a fire under me. It pissed me off. I'll just be honest with you, right? I mean, it made me angry because I wasn't ready to retire at that time. I didn't know really what I wanted at that time because of the stuff that I was going through. But if anybody that knows me knows that I'm not a quitter, right? And it's like, I'll go out on my own terms. I don't want something to have to push me out, kind of thing. So, it kind of lit a fire under me, man. It was like, okay, this is not the right woman for me. So, man, I'm talking about within days, I had made a decision not to go back to see that lady. And here I am back at square one, right? I'm 2 months into this deal already of being off, and I'm back to square one already again. So, it's a God thing, man. My union president calls me. I'm talking about, I don't know if it was the next day or the day after that. He calls me and he's like, hey, man. And he had kind of been checking in on me throughout the time, to see how I was doing and stuff. So he kind of not knew what was happening with doctor visits and stuff like that. So he tells me that he spoke to one of the state guys from the Texas State Association of Firefighters. He's our local vice president for our district. And says, hey, man, I talked to him. There's a place up in Prosper. He's been through it. And would you want to go talk to them? And I'm like, heck yeah, man, because I had no other option really at that time. And 3FTL, I don't know if you've heard of that or anybody else has, but I talk about them on the podcast all the time. Dude, it was like life-changing for me, right? So I called up Jen with 3FTL and was like, told her who I was. She's like, yep, they already called me, told me you was going to call. Can you be up here on Monday? So I'm like, heck yeah. So our union president, Chad Morgan, at the time, called him up and he's like, yep, I'll come pick you up, you and the wife, and I'll drive you up there. Just a solid brother. And so he comes and gets me, me and the wife, we go hour and a half to Prosper. And I sit in there, man, and spill my guts to her, everything that's going on. And she's like, we got you. You're in the right spot. Right. So she starts sending me out to vetted clinicians, which I was lucky enough to stay with the same counselor that I had been going to counseling with. She kind of vetted her and was like, hey, she's good. We want to keep you with her. Okay. So, got me hooked up with another doctor, nurse practitioner / psychologist to handle my meds and stuff like that, to get me off of what I didn't need to be on and on what I needed to be on, which was life-changing too. So, yeah, man, it's a 6 to 8 week program, and I went through the whole thing. And sorry, bro.
No, you're good.
So I went through that whole program, and yeah, it was life-changing for me. Continued to go to counseling, graduated from the 3FTO program. And man, I went back to work. So I was off from September, or the very end of September, all the way through February, however many months that is, right? I went back, I think not February, I'm sorry. No, it was February. I went back in February of 2022. So about a little over 5 months off. And when I went back, dude, it was like it lit a fire into me. Something's got to change, right? So I remember coming back on duty, and countless sessions from EMDR therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and just learned so much about myself, man, going through that before I went back on duty. And my trauma started when I was a child, man. And it wasn't like I had a bad childhood or anything, but I came from a divorced household. A lot of contention throughout those years. I was 9 years old when my mom and dad got divorced. So mom worked all the time. I was at home a lot, alone by myself, and had an older brother, but he was a teenager. So he was always in the truck, gone for the most part. Right. So just a lot of alone time as a kid, and I don't put any blame on my mother, my father, anything. I just know that it played a part in my life, So a lot of us go through that stuff, as firefighters, and bring that stuff in with us. But then you start stacking traumas from the fire service on top of that. And, it can lead to stuff like what I went through. It's just, it's as simple as that. Right.
I think, something that I just wanted to say real quick is like a lot of the situations that people go through, and when they finally, the people that are able to get the right help, like you were, you hear this all the time, and I'm sure you hear it more than me just because you're plugged into that scene a little bit more. It's just like, it was never the event that you think it was that caused it, right? It is typically something from our childhood and a lot of us didn't have terrible childhoods, just like you said, right? Like, and yet it stems back all the way to that point. So anyways, that just made me think of it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's not typically the calls that plays a part. Don't get me wrong, right? The traumas and stuff that we see as firefighters or EMTs or whatever, it absolutely plays a part in it, right? But it's typically other things, cumulative things that build up over time, whether it's from childhood or whatever it may be, just life in general. There's the stressors that we go through in life, right? You stack enough on your plate, eventually that plate's going to tip, and that's that's what happens. So, yeah, man. Whenever I came back, I started digging into anything that international, like the international had classes on peer support stuff, suicide awareness, being able to deploy as a peer, for major events and stuff like that. I took every class that I could possibly take. One, to learn as much about it, and two, to learn as much about it so that I knew what I went through and kind of validate the stuff that I went through, right? And that was huge for me, because at the time I really didn't know a whole lot of people that had been through that. I thought, man, am I the only one that's dealing with this crap? Well, I quickly found out that no, I'm not. There's a ton of people out there that are dealing with this stuff, right? And still are to this day. We've made leaps and bounds to try to get on top of it, but we're still not where we need to be.
Right.
We're still losing brothers and sisters to suicide, to their own hand. And when I started looking at the suicide death rate with just firefighters alone, man, it was eye-opening. It was like, what the heck is going on? And this is not something new. Like if you look at Jeff Deal's websites, Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, he's been on our podcast, and that's where I try to get most of my information from him, because he's pretty good about validating, right? On the suicide side of it. And when I got to his website and first discovered it and started actually looking at those suicide rates, man, it was just like, it's crazy. A lot of people don't realize in 2016, firefighter suicides surpassed line of duty deaths. Right? Think about that.
Crazy.
It's nuts. And that trend is, there's years that it doesn't surpass it, but the numbers are there to where it's like, one is too many. First,
I agree. Yeah.
One is too many. But when you're talking, 111 or, 130 or 99, it's like, that's a lot of brothers and sisters just on the fire side that feel like they have no other options, right? No other resource, nothing to get help other than take their own life by their own hand, right? And that just became my mission, man. It's like I said, I didn't choose it; it chose me, right? And it's like, what better of a person that somebody that has gone through it, had suicide ideations, because I did, right? I'm not ashamed to admit it. A lot of us go through that stuff, man. There's guys that try 2 or 3 times, and unsuccessful. I hate to say it like that, but I know brothers out there that have tried to commit suicide, right? And just wasn't their time, thank God. But right. So it happens, dude. And it's like trying to make it, I don't even want to say a normal thing, man, because it's not a normal thing, but just to bring the light awareness to it and just say, look, man, it's okay not to be okay sometimes. You just can't stay there. And you got to realize that there are avenues out there to get help, right? And, going back to the free burn, that's how we got started, man, was that, just it pushed me to want to try to help in a bigger way. So,
yeah. I think like it says it in your name, right? Like you're trying to burn the stigma, because there is a stigma. People aren't comfortable talking about their hardships, and that's where like another thing that you said, like that's where the brotherhood comes in, and even more than the broad brotherhood, right? Like that close inner circle of your friends that you have, and I just so people understand and know, because you said during your treatment program, you went through the EMDR, right? And then the cognitive behavioral therapy. Yep. Can you just explain like what each of those are real quick?
Yeah. Cognitive behavioral therapy, man, is like, most therapists are going to do that type of therapy, right? It's basically like talk therapy. And, a lot of people think, when they think therapist, they think what you see on TV, that you're going to go into this psych office, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a big fancy couch in there, but made out of velvet, and you're going to lay down and you're going to, spill all your deepest, darkest secrets to this dude or chick or whatever. It's not like that at all. There may be some out there like that, but I haven't seen one like that yet, right? It's basically, you go in to, like, the lady that does my counseling, man, it was life-changing for me, dude. Like, I can't even express, what that woman has done for me. It's just, I fully trusted her going in. We clicked right off the bat, and it was just like, she understood, right? And, a lot of people will go to therapists, and the therapist can't handle the stuff that we're going through, or that we're telling them, right? We break them down. And that's why it's so important for us to have vetted counselors, one. And then trauma vetted counselors is just another step. It's very important for us to have those. And then EMDR trauma therapist is another step. So the EMDR, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Yeah. Eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And basically what it does, man, it's like voodoo. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's crazy how it works, but it's very effective for a lot of people, right? It may not work for everybody, but it's very effective for a lot of people. It basically mimics REM sleep is what it does. Okay. And the process is, there's different ways of doing it. Some therapists will do it with a finger, and you're basically hitting right side, left side of the brain, going back and forth, like a metronome almost, you know. So the way that I did it was with, they call them pucks, okay, and they vibrate back and forth, right, left, and the therapist can intensify the vibration, turn it up, make it faster, turn it down, make it slower, and you start out with a trauma and you talk about that trauma that's affecting you, right? Say like a bad car wreck with a double fatality or whatever. So she'll ask you, okay, on a scale of 1 to 7 or 1 to 10, 10 being the worst anxiety, when you think about that call, what does it make you? How does it make you feel? How's your anxiety level, and where do you feel it at? Like a lot of my anxiety would be like butterflies in my stomach or head buzz, what I call it. And I'd say, it's at a 7 when I think about it, right? So that's where you start at. And then she starts the buzzers up, and like I would close my eyes. I didn't realize it until late, a couple of sessions in, that your eyes will start following the buzzing. It's crazy. And if you've ever noticed somebody that's asleep, how their eyes move, when they're like in deep sleep, that's REM sleep, right? Well, that's what it does. It mimics that REM sleep. Well, in REM sleep is where you process a lot of your information, thoughts for the day and stuff like that. Traumas, you process them and put them away. So, yeah, you just work your way through that, dude. And it's like, it takes you kind of a minute or two to get into it, right? And then stuff will start coming through, like different traumas throughout your life. You may start out with a bad trauma you saw at work, and you may end up with a trauma that you had during life, like your mom and dad being divorced, stuff that you went through there. It's crazy. And it's like you're rewiring neural pathways in your brain, right? And then you get into the whole, is it a serotonin deficit in your brain, a chemical that you don't have enough of that's causing you to do this stuff. And that's where the SSRIs come in and stuff like that. So I like to say, man, it's like having a broken arm, right? You can see that broken arm, and if you're going through anxiety, depression, and stuff like that, it's basically a brain injury is what it is, right? But you can't really see it, and that's what throws a lot of guys or gals off, So I think a lot of that comes from the stigma of not being able to see it going on. But if you break an arm, what do? You'll get it fixed, right? It's the same way with brain injury, man. You got to go get it fixed,
right?
Whether that means going to counseling, getting on meds, or whatever it is. It's okay. It's a brain injury. Sometimes, just like anything else in your body, you can get sick, and you got to go get it healed, right? So that's basically two types. There's several different other types of counseling that you can do, right? But I think the EMDR therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy are probably the two most basic ones that first responders do.
So I've heard those more than any, and I've had I don't know the number, but a few friends go through the EMDR or whatever it's called, and they've had nothing but great things to say about it. And so, I've never went and done it or anything like that. I'm sure I could benefit from it. I'm sure we all could, whether we realize it or not. But I'm there, you're really big, and this is something that I think a lot of people can relate to. And so I wanted to ask this question, like, when I was a brand new paramedic, whatever, like insert anybody else, I ran a pretty gnarly call, and I didn't really think it affected me that much, right? Like we all do, whatever, run the call, go back home. And then, I might have noticed like a little loss of sleep and stuff like that. But the one thing just to move the story along is like, finally, my wife, who was also in EMS, was finally like, okay, there's something wrong with you. What do we need to do to fix it? Like, let's talk about it. And so there's people that I've talked to that we've had these conversations, late night station talk, all that good stuff. And that's what ends up happening. But they recognize that they have the problem. Okay. But they're able to fix it like just personally, like, right. Like me and my wife talked about it. Now she knows what I'm going through and we're good. But I obviously haven't dealt with that. Right. Yeah. Like it's still there's an old adage, and I'm sure a lot of people know it, but it goes through our department, my department, and they talk about putting, pebbles in a backpack. And eventually those pebbles, it's just going to get heavier and heavier and heavier until one day they start spilling out. Right. I know there's a bunch of different parables to that, but I wanted to talk about more or less warning signs or things to look out for. Right. And maybe you could highlight those for people. Absolutely. Like, hey, if you're recognizing this in yourself or even your friends.
Yep. So I want to talk a little bit leading into that about free burn and kind of how we got started. Okay. Because this is exactly why we do what we do with free burn. So free burn actually started before it was even named free burn. When we got back, got our peer program started, right? Started kind of lining that stuff out. Didn't really have any kind of funding in anything, but Chief gave me a thumbs up and was like, heck yeah, let's do this, right? Because he saw the importance of it. So peer team gets started up, no funding. Dallas County ends up funding some of the fire departments in Dallas County. It took, I think it was $1 million of COVID money or ARPA money at the time, and distributed it out to whoever wanted it to start peer programs and mental health stuff for first responders. Obviously, we tried to snag some of that money and was lucky enough to get $20,000 of it and started our peer program out. So once we got that established in Balch Springs, I'm like, okay, we got a good start here. We're starting to turn a corner here with our peer program stuff. What next? Right? It was honestly, dude, it was a God-led thing for me. It was like, I just put myself out there for God and said, hey, use me to change this, right? In any way that I can. And that's exactly what's happened, to be honest with you. It's just like, so I would start talking to buddies in the fire service and telling them, where it started was, Balch Springs Police Alumni Association asked me to come talk about my journey and my mental health thing. So I started with that. Had no clue, man. Even like I was so nervous about doing it because I'd never really talked in front of a big group of people or anything. I still get nervous at times, but I get through it. But so it started with them. She was one of the council ladies, asked me to come speak there, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I asked my daughter to help me set up a PowerPoint presentation because I'd never done that before, right? I'm old. I mean, I just hadn't done it. So I can do it by myself now, thank God. But she showed me how to do that. So I learned that little skill. But I set up a PowerPoint presentation and did that. And then it led into going into fire departments. And it was like, I saw the impact that it started having, right? I go in and do this basic level, awareness level, PowerPoint presentation and talk about the signs and symptoms, which we'll talk about here in a second, and the things to look for, the importance of knowing each other, co-worker wise, right? And why that brotherhood, sisterhood is so important, why the culture is so important, right? We need to know each other in an aspect, in a big way, to where we see the changes whenever they happen and we can step in and say, hey, bro or sister, what's going on? I've noticed some stuff, are you struggling with something? Let's sit down and talk. It begins at that kitchen table, in all honesty. That kitchen table where we solve all the world's problems, that's where this starts at, right? Talking about the calls we just run on and processing that information. That's where it starts. So going out to these fire departments then led into going out to fire academies, like here local, DeSoto Fire Academy, Navarro College Fire Academy. I was lucky enough to be able to get in there. Fire in Texas, I've done some up there. And it's just like, the opportunities and doors started opening up, and the PowerPoint presentation pretty much remained the same. Obviously, my story still is the same, and just started seeing the impact of it, and then that led into podcast stuff, and just on another scale, right, to be able to reach out even further. So now I'm working with Next Rung, right, as a peer on their call-in line. So super honored that they asked me to do that. So the signs and symptoms, though, man, it's like you start seeing brothers and sisters start isolating, staying away, staying back in their bunks or whatever, and not coming out, just not being their normal selves. It can be as simple as that, right? We all go through stuff, okay? On and off duty, a lot of stuff is off duty, but we still go through stuff on duty. You talk about moral injury, and I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a little while. And just, man, there's so many aspects and so much depth to the mental health stuff that we deal with, and trying to get through it. It's very important to educate yourself on it and, have those clinicians set up so that if you do go through it, you get those people to where they need to be in a quick manner. Right. Mm-hmm. But isolation is one of them. Just not being normal, is the biggest thing. If you know a brother or sister that you work with, you've been with them for any kind of tenure, you're going to know when something's off with them, right? And the biggest thing is not being afraid to ask them. hey, is everything okay? And don't take, yeah, I'm good, man, as the answer. No, something's not right. Let's sit down and talk to me, brother, right? Or sister, whatever it may be. And actually showing some interest in each other, is the biggest thing. But like if you want to get into like signs and symptoms for depression, you're talking about, it's more than just feeling blue, right? Like sad all the time. It's marked weight loss. I mean, what else is there? Agitation, jumpiness, hypervigilance, all those things, just not being your normal self is the easiest way to say it.
Sure. Yeah, I think, something that you said, and it's, I guess I'll tell a story to lead into this. So I never really wanted to be a fireman, but one of the things that drew me to the fire service really when I started figuring out my life was the camaraderie and the team aspect. I grew up playing team sports, all that stuff. And, there's something that part of it has honestly disappointed me a little bit. Not in a sense of like, I don't think that we have a brotherhood, because I know that we do. But like when I look at the fire service and what it was, I guess, is like, you think of like all the off-duty stuff that all these crews used to do together. And that's stuff that, unless you just have that really plugged in group and really core group of guys, it's just not happening a ton anymore. And I'm very fortunate to be on a crew that does try to prioritize that. But like you said, if you don't know the guys you're working with and you don't know them on a deeper and intimate level, which you should, you're spending 24 and 48 hours with these guys at a time. Like that's where it needs to start at, is those relationships. So,
yeah, you break into moral injury type stuff, and it's like betrayal's big in the fire service. And, dude, I've talked to so many people that it's like, they felt betrayed in one way or another, whether it be, it could be something as simple as, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, like one of our guys that, say he was trying to get off of the squad, okay, or something like that, and these guys are having little back meetings behind his back, right, kind of thing, and ended up screwing him and putting him back on something as simple as that, right? Betrayal type stuff, moral injury type stuff. It's happening way more, it seems like, nowadays than it was, back 20 or 23 years ago whenever I started. There's a lot of stuff that has changed. Some stuff is for the good, obviously, and I feel like we're in a transition period to where some stuff is still not where it needs to be, and there's a lot of stuff that's changing for the good. Like peer teams are starting to get bigger now, and it's just like, I don't know, man. I've tried to pinpoint a lot of stuff on my podcast to try to figure out like what is the one thing that is causing a lot of the issues with our brothers and sisters when it comes to mental health. I still haven't figured it out. I think it's a number of different things.
Yeah,
I like to say that everybody's story or journey is a little bit different, but the outcomes are usually the same. And what I mean by that is like, you may go through stuff that's totally different than what I go through to lead to anxiety, depression, suicide ideations, and all that stuff, right? May be completely different. Your journey, your story is completely different, but the anxiety, the depression, suicide ideations, it all typically is the same outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the way, that's what I've found out by doing podcasts, and just the number of people that I talk to outside of podcast and with podcasts. It's just like the outcome is usually the same. The journeys are different,
Yeah.
So
the and obviously you're helping people and everything like that, and we kind of talked about it beforehand, but it's something that I can't help but think about, and that's the people you have around you, the culture, around you. And I like, thanks to guys like yourself and everything else, like I think you are, and we are effectively, burning that stigma and giving people the opportunity to talk about things when it's super easy now for someone to tell you about some hardships that they're coming through.
Yeah.
So I wanted to highlight a little bit of like the culture and how big of a role of importance it plays in the mental health things.
Yeah. Super important, man. I mean, if you've got a culture that is not bought in, right, quote unquote, bought into the mental health thing, right, it's just not going to work, plain and simple. That stigma is going to be stuck there. So educating your members on it, and like the stuff that we go through, and almost normalizing the stuff, like I say, it's okay to be okay. or okay not to be okay. Sometimes you just can't stay there. Well, it's completely okay to be okay too, right? If you don't go through it, that's awesome. But just remember, you may be the dude that helps bring your brother or sister out of it that's going through it, right?
That's good.
So don't look at it from a standpoint of what it's never going to affect me, and it may never affect you, but you may be the change to help somebody that it does affect, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to educate yourself on mental and behavioral health for us as first responders, because
Well, oh man, yeah. Sorry, it just blew my mind that you said that, because I know a lot of people suffer through that, right? Like being okay.
yeah,
Your best friend's running calls that you didn't run, but you want to run a call like that. Now they're going through it, and you're just like, well, I don't necessarily want the problems that come with that, but like you wanted to be there, right? It's almost like the fear of missing out type of thing.
yep,
Man, that's big to just to be able to know that, like, hey, it's okay that your friend is struggling, and so you can be there for them.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. It was like, and I dealt with that a lot whenever I was going through it, and going through therapy. I remember talking to my therapist about, what are the guys going to think about me? Are they going to perceive me as weak now, or that I can't do my job now? It was, my mind spun 100 miles an hour, and it was just so many thoughts that were coming in my mind that I would worry about that was really not, you know, rational, I guess you could say, for me to worry about. My guys, man, I mean, were there guys that probably thought that? Absolutely. There probably were, right? I mean, just to be honest, yeah, there probably were guys that thought that. We still have guys in our department, man, that are not, I hear the little things that happen behind scenes about our peer team and stuff like that, about, a dude may go out and they don't, man, he's just going out because, he wants to go out. There's nothing really wrong with him. That stuff still happens. It happens in every fire department, right? But until it tags you, you really don't know. I mean, like I said earlier, it's a brain injury. It's not something that you typically, your brain's not hanging out or something like that. Like a broken arm, you see a broken arm. A brain injury you typically don't see unless it's, through your actions or that person's actions or something. So, if a dude's isolating or, not being, he's being that shift a-hole or whatever, that was me for a long time, right? A lot of my stuff came out in anger. And both at home and at work, I wasn't abusive or anything, but it's just like I was pissed all the time,
Right.
and my wife saw it, my kids saw it, everybody saw it. I saw it in myself, but I didn't know what was going on, but my way of dealing with it was through anger. It came out through anger for me. That's something else you probably need to talk about, the different ways that it shows itself,
Yeah.
a lot of times just through anger, a lot of times alcohol, drug abuse, sexual addictions, pornography, infidelity. Firefighters have for all first responders really have a huge divorce rate because of all those things that I just named, right? Those are all coping mechanisms to either cover up or bury what we're going through, right? Or searching for that dopamine hit all the time, because as first responders, man, we're all pretty much type A personalities. We're always looking for that dopamine rush, whatever it is, to give us that rush that we feel like when we go on medical calls or fires or whatever, that rush. We're always seeking that rush. So we typically turn to things that are going to try to fulfill that off duty.
Yeah.
And it leads to bad things, believe it or not, it does. Nothing wrong with going out and having a beer with your buddies. I'm not saying that. But when it comes to an excess and it starts affecting the way that you're living your life or your home family or your job or something like that, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes an issue. When you're turning to those things to try to suppress your feelings or whatever the crap that you're going through, that's when bad things start happening, right? So there's a huge difference there. But
Yeah.
coping mechanisms are a real deal,
I think it's important to understand, like, just like you said, there's nothing wrong with going out and getting a drink with your buddies. And even if it's once every 2 months or once every now and then or whatever, but every single time you do it, it goes a little overboard. Like,
yeah,
I used to drink a lot, and nowadays I try to distance myself from it a little bit. And there's always that line, and luckily there's people out there that have a healthy grasp on that. But totally see the guys that don't drink, and when they do drink, it's like every time, and it's just you know them personally.
yeah.
It's probably something underlining it. I'm learning a lot right now, so this is great. This is great.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. No, so the peer support teams, I learned a while back that there was a state peer support team, and
Yep.
My department has a peer support team, and it's something that like I'm actively getting involved with, or at least trying to get involved with. But if someone like wanted to do exactly what you did, try to start one up or try to get involved with that, and maybe their department has no peer support team whatsoever, at least nothing on the official level, how would they go about that?
Let me tell you how we did it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So when I came back and talked to Chief and said, hey, we need to start this peer program stuff, right? And then I started educating myself on it, and like I said, we had no funding in the beginning. It was just thumbs up, get after it, dude. Do what you got to do, So the way that we started is like I went to each shift and said, hey, y'all name 2 guys off of each shift that you feel comfortable with talking to if you were going through some crap, right? And name those 2 guys. And then they wrote it down on a piece of paper, very rudimentary, elementary type stuff, write it on a piece of paper. Those are going to be your peer team guys for your shift, right? So, and that's exactly how we got started. We started with 2 guys from each shift. And keep in mind, we're only one department or one station, right? So it was a little easier for us to do that. So,
Sure.
But that's how it started, man. The shifts picked who they felt comfortable with talking to if they were going through some crap, right? And then educating those guys, it started with the International Association of Firefighters. They had on their website, it's the education end of it. They do all these different, programs. And the first one was an awareness level mental behavioral health class. I think it was 2 hours long. I think every member should have to take that class just to know the basic awareness level, what you look for. I highly recommend that class. It's free. You just have to be a member, right? You have to be an international member, but, and then those classes, well, you know what? You may not have to be. I'll have to double check on that, but because I know they offer it to clinicians and doctors and stuff like that too. So anyway, I took that class first, tried to get our guys to start taking that 2-hour class just to get to an awareness level. And then the next class is the advanced level peer support group. And it basically teaches you how to work with people, talk to people, the signs to look for and stuff, and also how to set up your peer program, right? And so I took that class. It was a pretty tough class to get into because there's a ton of people who want to take it right now. For the international, you can basically pay them to come teach that class in-house. The locals can, but it's pretty expensive. Or you can just try to get set up on the email list through the international, and then they'll send you emails whenever a class is opened up. And the way that it works, from my understanding, is just say like Ball Springs is going to host a class. We have 25 seats open. Only 20 of those seats get filled. Then those last 5 seats will be free seats for whoever wants to sign up for it through an online thing, right? And that's what I did. It took me, I think, three tries before I finally got into one of the classes, and I believe it was one in Kentucky that I ended up getting into. Didn't cost me anything, but yeah, it took me a while to get it, but I finally got it. And then once you take the advanced level peer support class, then it opens up other classes to you, like the suicide awareness class. And then the one, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's, say you have a mass casualty incident, or, something like Katrina or something like that happens, then the international can pull you and you deploy with the international to go help first responders that are working that disaster or whatever it may be, right? So very good resources, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it started there for me and the guys at the department. And then, like I said, Dallas County, we got some of that funding. And I learned through the international peer class that oversight is very important. You need to have some type of oversight, which is usually an outside company that comes in and does your training, sets up your oversight, and does all your scheduling for counseling sessions and stuff like that. So Readiness Group does that for us. I met them, Dr. Brenda Tillman, going through my journey shortly, towards the end of my journey. I met her, and man, awesome group, and that was the end goal, to get them as our oversight. And we made that happen with that money. So now the way that our process works is we have peer support, right? So if somebody's having some issues, they can talk to us as peers and, try to work it, that table talk, try to work through it. If that's not enough, then next step is, we have it now on our website through the readiness group, have our own website set up where members can go on, fill out their name, address, and stuff like that, hit send. It sends it over to readiness group. And within hours, at most days, they have you connected to a counselor getting you help. Think about that.
Yeah.
So instead of months, guys are getting help in record time, man. I've seen it happen in as little as a day. So, yeah. And you don't even have to go to a peer. If you don't feel comfortable talking to one of us as a peer, then you can absolutely go directly to readiness group. They'll get you hooked up with somebody to talk to and then determine whether you need to go whatever level it is, whether it's counseling or inpatient or whatever it may be, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, whatever it is, right? But also, with that being said, you also have to have buy-in from the top, obviously, right? Because now you're talking about time off, or we're going to put you on FMLA or use sick time, all those logistical things that you have to figure out from a admin, standpoint. So it's a lot of work, dude, but I'm telling you, it's like once you get your system figured out and, you get your SOPs drawn up on, how are we going to handle these situations, when they come up, it's, it can be life changing for guys. I've seen it happen number of times just in our department. We've had several people utilize our system and it's been phenomenal from what I've heard.
That's great. I have I was listening to everything you said and I was trying to put myself in the shoes of someone that doesn't have a peer support team. And then just try to pick one thing out that could have been discouraging to someone. And one of the things you have to have support from the top levels. And I was sitting there, I can't imagine in the world we live in for any administration to tell you no to that.
I'm telling you right now, bro,
that's a big problem.
I'm telling you right now, it's still happening.
Man, it makes me want to say really bad things and I'm not going to, but
yeah,
that I just can't imagine you saying hey, I think we have a systemic problem, blah, blah, blah. I want to start this up and then getting told no to that. Cause for what?
Dude, I've heard this has been it's been a few months, maybe even close to a year ago. I'm not going to name any departments, but there's a department in our Metroplex area that, there was I think he was an assistant chief and bigger department, was going through some stuff, had, 20 plus years in the service and, sought help, got help, was diagnosed with PTSD, was an, extended time off duty, I think close to a year, ended up running out of time. And I'm, there may be other parts of this story that I haven't heard yet, but the parts that I heard was that he went back to try to seek more time to, still in counseling, still in therapy and stuff like that. And they gave him more time. They gave him a pink slip with that time and said, sorry, see you later. And there may have been other things underlying. I'm hoping that there was, not for his sake, but just, I'm hoping that it wasn't just a PTSD diagnosis and him having mental health issues and trying to get through those. Right.
Sure.
But I hear those stories all the time. The workers' comp system is a nightmare, man, when it comes to mental health stuff. There's so many, like I said, there's so many different levels, man, that it's just, I've learned this over time. And the more that I get involved, it's just like the different layers are just, it's incredible to me, the stuff that we have to go through just to get help.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that I wanted to make sure to talk about, and it's because it's something that hits a little close to home. And like I said earlier, I'm pretty fortunate to have a wife, a spouse that understands the line of work I'm in. She stays at home now, but she was in EMS for a while. And, the other day, a lot of the things, and I think a lot of people relate to this. It's the only reason I'm telling this story is I find myself more times, not even dealing with anything traumatic, but just dealing with guilt, right? I know the area that you work in and the area I work in is fairly low income. And once again, just to tell a small story, rent a call at a pretty low income apartment complex and walk in and it was nothing more than a lift assist on the engine and walk in and there's literally probably a 18-month-old baby sleeping on the couch. There's a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old just roaming. It's 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I left that call and walked to the engine with tears rolling down my eyes, because I was just like, man, like, how much do I take advantage of the fact knowing that right now my 18-month-old is asleep in her crib, right? And my babies, my older kids, they're asleep in their own bed, right? And in the house that luckily I'm able to provide for them. And I'm, like I said, I'm very fortunate I was able to talk to my wife with that. And like,
You know what it's called?
Ooh, I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
It's called moral injury, brother.
Oh man. Okay.
That's exactly what moral injury is, right? That's one extent of moral injury, because it goes against like what you're morally taught as a human being, like it's just not natural for you as, for what you do and how you raise your kids. It's for you, that is a moral injury, right?
Interesting.
It's simple as that, and I mean, it goes even further than that. Moral injury can be a number of different things, but like not being able to save somebody on a CPR, that can be a type of moral injury, right? And it just, like I said, there's so many different aspects.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure we could talk about this all day. And
yeah,
I guess going back to my story was just like, one of the huge problems that we talked about it already is like the divorce rate, and a lot of it is because, I have friends that I know that don't talk about work with their spouse.
mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that I disagree with it. I think to some extent, maybe you should shield them a little bit. But I also heard someone talking about mental health one time and said like, no, you should tell them everything because their imagination is way worse than what, it actually is.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious, like, for one, talk or don't talk. Two, hide or don't hide. And I guess three, like when you trying to just communicate going through some of those things at work with your spouse and what that looks like.
Man, that's a deep one. Like for me, man, it's like a lot of times my wife wants to hear a lot of it, right? So, and let me start out with saying that, dude, if it wasn't for my wife and my kids and the Lord above, no doubt I probably wouldn't be here today. Because those were the anchors that kept me grounded the whole time, right? I mean, I just can't say enough about it. My wife was like, I mean, you met my wife down at Daniel, and she's just like, I'm glad that she is starting to become more of a part of what I'm doing or what we're doing with free burn stuff. Like she's instrumental, man. Our families are the rocks that keep us grounded 90% of the time, right? If not 100% of the time. But what the way that I want to answer that is, it's really up to your spouse, on how much they want to take in. So, some spouses, they want the morning news version of stuff, right? Where they don't want all the graphic details and everything, but they just want the headline news. Yeah, we ran this call and, this is what we did. We didn't take them to the hospital. Good. That's all they want. They don't want the graphic detailed end of it. But you need to try to find that person, that wants to hear the graphic and detailed end of it, because that helps you to process information, right? So whether that may be your spouse or, another brother, your sister that you work with at the firehouse, or somebody that's completely off, right? And not even a part of the fire service at all. Just, that one person that can sit down and listen to, whether it's a pastor or whatever it may be, right? It's very important to have those type of people too. So, but that can be your wife. A lot of times your wife, they want to know the stuff that you're going through, but you got to be careful with that too, because there's a thing called vicarious trauma that you can pass those traumas off to them. Right.
Right.
So it's just, you got to have healthy avenues to be able to process information, right? Whether it's through going and working out, or, going and reading a book, or whatever it may be for you, right? A lot of guys or gals, it's going and working out, a hard workout, just to get stuff off your mind. And it can be something as simple as that, to get you through certain situations. But it's also very important to talk about those things, to be able to process them. So there really is no right or wrong answer to that. I think it's whatever your significant other, spouse, wife, husband, whatever it may be, and whatever they want to take on and what they don't want to take on. You just kind of let them decide that, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that answer, because it just makes sense, now to think about it, because my wife's one of those people that they want to know the nitty gritty. I mean, she was in the line of work. She does, she wants to know it. And then one of my best friends, like his wife probably wants the morning news version of it. That's a great way to put it. And so, and we've had those conversations before, and just to put things into perspective of what you said, is just like, yeah, find someone else so that guy could talk to me about stuff that he went through when he can't share that with his wife. So
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's a
and
perfect thing.
I'll send you a link, man. It's Ann Gagliano. Her husband, I can't remember where he's at, up north, some northern fire department. I think he's a captain or battalion chief or something. So they go out and do a lot of mental health stuff. I'll send you the link so you can
Is
post
it Pat?
And
No,
talking about the husband.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. Yeah.
See, he, I don't know him personally, but I think he's an FDNY guy. And I think he typically comes down and teaches at Joey D days down here in the Houston area.
Gagliano.
Gagliano. Yeah. Pat, I think it's his name.
So it's his wife did an article for, I believe it was fire engineering. Dude, every fire wife should have to read that article.
Okay.
And I'll send you the link to it, but it basically explains why we don't typically go to our wives to talk about the day-to-day stuff that we do as first responders, right? And it kind of shines a light on, because we're basically trying to protect them, is what the article's talking, but it goes way in depth. It's like I said, every fire wife should have to read that article, because the way that she puts it is like dead on, man. It's exactly,
Yeah.
So I'll make sure I'll post that. You can put it in the link.
Yeah, dude, send it over my way. And while we're talking about that, I want you to send any other links for resources, and I will 100% link them into the show notes. Yeah. I want to just let you keep talking. Like I really am. Like I tell people all the time that I didn't start it, but when I took over TBM, there was a selfish aspect to it. And it was to learn, and there's a lot of stuff that like I'm well versed in, if you will. But can still learn some, obviously. But like this is one thing that I'm very surface level, and so it's something that I think is very important to me, and so I'm really just learning about it, and I think we just crossed over the 1 hour mark, and I'm good to do whatever you need. But is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Yes.
Okay.
A couple more things, and it's all yours.
No, let's do it. Let's keep going. Like I said, I'm learning a lot, and I hope other people are too. So I'm good for it,
dude. I mean, like there, like I said, there's so many levels of this, man. But it's like if we can just touch on some of the basic stuff, like I just want to say real quick, like a good guide, man, that I kind of go by for myself. If I do go on say a child CPR or the bad calls, right, that we go on that really weigh on us. I try to just gauge myself like in a 72-hour window. If I'm not moving past that event within 72 hours, okay, give or take some, but if I'm still not sleeping good, if I'm having, night terrors or nightmares or whatever you want to call them, right, within that 72-hour gap there, and just not feeling myself, right, that's when I know for me that I need to be reaching out to my counselor and saying, hey, I need to come talk to you. I need to get this stuff and process it, right? So find out what that is for you. Like, think about bad calls that you've had in the past and how long did it take you to work through those bad calls. And what you'll figure out is that it's usually a certain time period, right? Whether it's 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever, until it's not like you're ever going to forget those calls, but when it stops affecting you in a negative way on your daily activities, right? If it's still affecting you in a negative way to where you're not wanting to do your workouts, or you're isolating at home, or just like, hey, leave me alone for a little while, I don't want to deal with none of that, you're just not yourself, how long is it taking you to move past that? And if you're still within that time frame and or a little bit outside of it and it's still bothering you, then you may want to start thinking about talking to a peer or trying to get set up with a counselor or something like that. That's something I wanted to tell you about too. Try to figure out how to gauge that for yourself, and just kind of remember that whenever you go on a bad call, if it affects you, if you're not moved past it a certain amount of time, maybe start thinking about, I need some help, and that can be as simple as calling us, talking to your peer program, or, whatever it may be, getting to the right people is the main thing. So that was one thing. And then, there's something else I was want to tell you about, but just about free burn, and just, use us as a resource, right? Next Rung is another excellent resource. So, if you're going through it, and again, you don't want to talk to a peer, or you don't want to call free burn, or whatever it may be, Next Rung's there. They got a dial-in line. I'll give you the link to that. Basically, you just type in support, and then one of us will pick it up as a peer. Like everybody that answers those phones through text or phone call is a first responder, right? Or has something to do with first responders. Most of us are firefighters. So you're talking to a true peer, right? We're not clinicians, so we're not going to try to put you through a therapy session or something like that. But if that's what you need, we'll have you fill out the information and we'll shoot it up to the higher ups and next rung, so to speak. And they'll get in contact with you and get you to the right people. The resources are there, man. I mean, there's really no reason for us to go through this stuff alone. You're not alone, right? You just need to know that. And yeah, we're here for resource, man. I mean, we're growing eventually we want to have our nonprofit status. That's what we're working on this year. And it may take another year for us to get it. But end goal is get nonprofit status and then be able to pay for brothers and sisters that need help with counseling costs or inpatient cost or whatever it may be, right? That's a real deal, man. Like for me, whenever I went through it, I was going once a week to counseling and I had a HSA insurance account, right? Ate that money up in no time, dude. So then it was like out of my pocket, and counseling's not cheap. I mean, you're talking 100 to 150 bucks a session and you're going once a week, you know, I mean, figure that up, dude. That's just another stressor, right? And it was a big deal for me, and it's still a big deal for a lot of people. Insurances, you know, a lot of insurances don't cover stuff, you know. So that's the end of it that I think that we can be the most effective in when it comes to raising money and funds, is being able to help other first responders. Yeah. It's another worry that we can take off their plate, that they don't have to worry about the money end of it. You know, that's our end goal, is to try to do that.
That's awesome. So we know how it started and we know what your goals are. What resources as of right now does Free Burn offer?
So right now, man, we educate, right? It's probably one of the biggest ones. We advocate. This is another big one. And, our mission statement is we educate, advocate, and eventually we want to be able to help money wise, you know? Right. That's what we do, man. I mean, we go out to these fire departments, fire academies. We do that presentation. It's free. We don't charge to do it. That's all the education, the end of it, right? Yeah, we don't charge nothing to do it. We just come out, you know. So it's usually about an hour and a half presentation, and then I usually try to do like a 2.5 to 3 hour window, because it's not about the present. It is about the presentation, but it's not about the presentation, because the conversations that happen after they hear the story or my journey, and then a little bit of education they get from a very basic level mental and behavioral health class. Dude, it's just like the stuff that happens after that is just mind blowing. You know, people open up. Sometimes it doesn't happen at every time, every time we go talk, but 90% of them it does. It just gives you a whole other perspective on it, you know? Yeah. And basically that's what we're doing when we're doing a podcast. I mean, that's just getting people on and talking about their journeys. You know, I'll shut up and just let them do their thing, right? And I'll, just be a podcaster. That's what I do. You know, I'm not great at it, but the platform is there. If you want to tell your story, come on. It's educating people out there. Yeah. I think we're in the 27 or 28 right now, stories or journeys that we've had. And, dude, I hear all the time how the people that come on and how they affect other people, right? Their journey. Maybe one person needs to hear that story, that resonates with the stuff that they're going through. So it's been a blessing, dude. We're not done. Yeah. We're just getting started.
Well, you're doing some really, really good things. And like that caught my eye. And then it was just like happenstance that we met at Dadgum. And I was like, man, I would love to, have you on the podcast and talk about like what you guys are doing, because like I've mentioned so many times, like the podcast alone is just, it's great. And then outside of the podcast, what you guys are hoping to do and what you're already offering is phenomenal. Yeah. So if someone wanted to have you out to their department or even like their fire academy or whatever the case is, how would they reach out to set that up?
Probably the quickest and easiest way is through my website, www.freeburn23.com. Okay. Contact us through there or call me on my phone, right? 972-978-5193. not afraid to get my phone out there. I really do want to help people. The quickest way, if you try to get through my phone, is to text me, right? Text me first, and then if I'm not on a call, a podcast, or out with my family or do something like, if you text me, I need help right now, I'm gonna walk away and I'm gonna try to help you best I can, right? Yeah. But yeah, contact me through my phone, contact me through email, and I'll give you it's freeburn2023@gmail.com is my email. So, and I'll give you all those contacts. Yeah, I mean, just call me up, man. Well, obviously, if it's like 2 states over, then right now we're not in a position to where we can just out of our pockets take it. So I may need help to get to that to that level. But like for the class, we're not charging anything for that. You know, my goal is not to make money for myself. It is to educate and make money for the brothers and sisters out there that actually need that help, you know, whether it's through, like I said, counseling cost or inpatient or whatever it may be. So yeah, a podcast not monetized. Yeah, man. I mean, it's just raw and real, you know.
Well, I love it. I love the platform you have. I love what you guys are doing. And I think that just like your vulnerability to be able to share your story and the authenticity you have with wanting to help people, it says enough about you. And I think you're just going to see continued success with that. So, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've been looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to it since we met, because I was like, it is something that I care about, and it's not something that I know a lot about. It's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. And I hope that through this episode, other people walk away feeling the exact same way I feel right now, just like wanting to learn more about it to be able to, you know, help somebody or even myself. So,
dude, I'm just a fireman, just like the rest of us out there, right? I love the fire service. I was that close to losing something that I very, very much love, you know, and it's just my passion for the fire services. I mean, I go to trainings, I do all that stuff, right? Because I want to try to better myself as a fireman, just the craft alone. But, and then on top of that, the people that I have met, like you and the Flugers and all these other dudes through training sessions and stuff like that, man, that played a vital role in Burn getting started. It's just been lifelong friendships. And I always say, man, if you can't find it in your firehouse, go find it outside, because I promise you that brotherhood is alive and well. So
it is.
Get out there and get some for sure.
Yes. You kind of fired me up towards the end there. All right, guys. This has been Tailboard Misfits podcast. I appreciate you listening. Stay tuned. We got a lot of great upcoming guests, a lot of good things in the works. So we appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you, brother.